Hello, Dominic here, with a word about problems you can experience with double transformations when you are using a transform effector. So I have an empty scene over here, and I am going to create a sphere. I am going to create a locator. I'm going to parent the mesh to that locator. On this mesh I'm going to create in a weight map, so new map. I'm going to leave it as it is by default, click OK. Then going to vertices, going to select, for instance, this part of the vertices, Shift W for my vertex map weight. I'm going to set the weight to, for instance, 30% and click in the viewport. Now it isn't visible, but when I set this to vertex map you see the values. I'm going to decrease my selection with Shift arrow down and set this value to, for instance, 60%. Click in the viewport, again narrow my selection. I'm going to set these values to 1. Click in the viewport, and now you can see I have a weight map modulating from 0 to 1. Going to turn off my vertex map view, back to shaded, going back to my setup tab, going to item mode, select this sphere item. It's not really necessary, you don't have to select it, you can add a transform effector manually, but when you select the item and now when you go to the commands tab, deformer tab, and press transform, you see in the item list a transform effector has been added, and the mesh over here has now a plus sign. When you click on it you see the transform weight general influence. So when I pull my mesh into my schematic view, you have your yellow circle. When I middle click, I have my transform general influence, and when I middle click on that yellow circle you see my transform effector, like this. Now when I move this transform effector, so I've clicked on it in the schematic view, so it is selected, press W for the move key, you see it will move the top of my sphere. Press Ctrl Z to undo. And as I have done before, you've seen before, I have parented the mesh to a locator, and when I select that locator and move that around, W to move that around, I move my sphere around, as you can see, sorry for that. And when I select my transform effector and move that around, you see it works as it should. But when I select my parent locator again and go press the E key for rotate, then strange things happen. Well, strange, maybe it isn't strange, maybe it's intended, but anyway, this is not what I wanted to do. I want to, when I rotate the parent, I want to rotate everything without deformation, and apparently this is this kind of setup is not correct. You should do it differently, as I've gathered from various sources on the forum and on tutorials. I'm not an expert, so I'm going to show you a setup that does work. I've learned a bit about it by viewing other videos on the forum, but they weren't very clear, so I hope that when I explain it here it will be a bit more clearer. Again, I'm not an expert, so So I'm going to open another scene that I've created earlier, and this scene consists of a group locator that has been locked, so I cannot select it. The only thing that I can select in the viewport by lassoing is this locator. This is the only thing that is selectable. Going to expand it, and in that group locator I have my mesh, the sphere. I have 3 other locators which I've called master mover, this which is being displayed as this circle, a top mover and a bottom mover. Now in this scene I haven't created transform effectors, but actually the setup, as you can see here, is exactly the same as if I had created a transform effector, with the single difference being that I don't work with weight maps but with weight containers, and the values of those weights are all 1, so I haven't found a way yet to make different weight values in a single weight container. I have to learn about that, but anyway I could have done this setup completely with transform effectors and the result would have been the same, with that difference that with a weight map I could have had different values. But now when I move my top mover, so when I click on the top mover here, it's that locator, press W, you see everything up here has a value of 1, so there is no modulation between the vertices. Going to press Ctrl Z to undo, and going to explain the setup further. So 3 locators, a master mover, the circle, a top mover and a bottom mover that will act as a transform effector. And in order to do that, you have so this is the locator. In order to do that, I have added for each locator a general influence. You can see here in the properties general influence, and a weight container. To create this weight container, I have first selected the mesh, gone to vertex mode, going to the front view, selected these top vertices, then selected my weight container in the schematic view, and then this becomes grayed. This was grayed out and is now available at points. When I click on it, these points are going to be added to this weight container with a value of 1. Going to deselect, back to item mode and to perspective mode. Then when I plug my top mover into my general influence and my general influence into that weight container, then for that general influence I can say over here in the properties, type weight map, and when I click on weight map name I can choose the correct weight map for that top mover. And the same thing for that bottom mover. And now I can move this locator around. So I've selected it in the viewport, W to move, and as you can see everything moves. I can rotate it. So you can see everything rotates perfectly. I can even scale it like that. But I haven't moved my so-called transform locators yet. They aren't really transform locators, but the setup is the same, so you can see of them as transform effectors. So I've selected the top mover now. Now I can move this slider over here, and you see in the Y, and you see also the locator move in the scene. Now I have set these locators to be visible. I could go to display, to my channel, for instance, channels, go down and go too visible, and I could say no, because I don't really need to see them in the scene, but I've left it to yes, so you can see what is happening with that locator. When I move it in Y, you see the locator is moving in Y, but actually it is moving my mesh in that local direction. Now for this locator, in some setups it is selected. In some setups, I'm going to my channels, you should set the deformation mode to local, but in this setup it doesn't make a difference whether it is being set to world or to local, so it's still world. The same thing for the bottom mover, you see deformation mode world, and now the bottom mover is selected. And in the channels, I could change the values over here in the properties tab. I can also go to channels, go to position, and going to click all the way to scale and press the C key on my keyboard to get my channel hall. Excuse me. And now you can see when I click on this and drag, you can see it moves perfectly as it should. Position Z, I can rotate it in various directions, and I can even scale it. With that having done, when I select my master mover, I can do what I should do, and I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm back, sorry for that, nasty cough. Didn't want to put you through that. So I have my master mover selected, and when I rotate, the whole object rotates without deformation. Unlike my previous scene where I had parented my mesh and my transform effector to my master mover locator, when I then rotated, the mesh got deformed, probably because of some double transformation. In this setup, this doesn't happen. I can move it like that. It doesn't get deformed. You can see. I can scale it. It doesn't get deformed. And I can rotate it, and I can even scale it, and then it deforms, of course. But not through. But as a whole, not separately through those effectors. And when again I select these effectors, I can scale, move them around, and rotate them like so. And again, when I select my master control, the whole object reacts without deformation, extra deformation. Another important thing in this setup is over here in the Deformers tab. So when I click on it, I have my transform. I'm going to show its properties. So my transform general influence, my transform for my bottom mover, and my transform for my top mover. And the order of this stack is important. So I have experienced that my transform for my full mesh, which is this one in the schematic view, for my master mover, has to be on top. If I pull this down, you see everything collapses. This is not what it should be. So the order is important. The only problem with this is that I have found very little information about this, why this happens. So I have figured out how to do it. I still don't know a lot about why this is happening. But I wanted to show you it like this. Hopefully this will clarify a lot for you if you want to rig a character, for instance, and add transform effectors to it, or as I've done locators that act as transform effectors. And I'm going to stop again, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry for that. So as I've done a setup as if it were transform effectors, but with weight values of all 1, if I had used transform effectors, I could have used weight maps with different values, but the setup would have been the same, with that difference being that in a schematic view there would be no weight containers over here. There only would be a top mover for the locator and a general influence, and this would directly be plugged into the mesh. And in my item list I have grouped everything, so this is kind of my sphere group locator. This has been locked. I cannot select it in the viewport. I also cannot move it. When I select this, I have set it in the channels to select no, lock yes, and I could and lock yes. So when I go to my properties, you see it's all grayed out. I can't rotate it. When I rotate it, it doesn't actually do anything, or when I scale it, it doesn't. It's just a container for my item to move around in the scene. And you see there is no parenting over here, absolutely no parenting. But because of this setup with a master mover locator, a general influence, and a weight container that contains this weight container, actually I didn't explain this, I think, contains the whole mesh. When I select this one, you see it's set to entire mesh. Again, to create this weight container, I selected the mesh, went to vertices, selected all, then selected the weight container and moved over here and said clicked add points. So this weight container contains all the points. Go back to my item mode. Contains all the points, and this setup acts like a hierarchy, but in the item list nothing actually has been parented, except for the fact that these items all have been parented to a group locator, but that's just for organizational reasons. That's not for deformation reasons. I could further group items in here for clarity, but an important thing to remember when working with deformers, as I've learned right now, is that to not parent them to other components that are being deformed or are being animated. So the only thing that's being animated in this setup is the master mover locator, as you can see, and the top mover locator and the bottom mover locator. And when I set these to visible, when I say no, they don't clutter your scene if you have multiple of them, and I can select them over here in the schematic view, or I can select them, still select them in the top mover, in the item list. They are set to selected to no, so I cannot select them over here. So you see, if I do this, I only select my master mover. So nothing really has been parented, and by separating everything out like this in the schematic view, working with general influences and weight containers, I can do what I've shown you: rotate, scale, and move everything as a whole without a double transform. And as I've explained, the order in the stack in the deformations, in the deformers tab, is important, but I really would like to find out more for actually how this works, because I don't like doing things without knowing why. It's important to know, and I think Modo really lacks about in this area as far as the information goes. Anyway, I hope this helps. I hope this makes some things clearer. It actually did for me. I do have to thank a few people that have already posted a few videos about this, because I've learned a bit about it, but they weren't very clear to me. I hope this will clarify things for you. So this was Dominic, and bye for now.